Okay, so hello, Gwen, and all the listeners. My name is Ketmar. I'm the creator of Developer Habits, which is a YouTube channel for software engineers interested in growth mindset, developer lifestyle, and technical tutorials. And today I have Gwen here with me, and who's a fellow YouTuber, a engineer, and also an educator, but I'm not gonna do the introduction myself for you, so you can do it yourself.
Hi, thanks. I'm happy to be here. My name is Gwen, and I am a software developer, and I also run a YouTube channel called Faraday Academy, where I teach about mostly different programming languages and related topics. But I also have a lot of content about getting in the industry and leveling up your developer game. All about things that I've learned over the past 5 years of being a developer and how I went from kind of a newbie who didn't know anything and uh, kind of had the severe imposter syndrome starting out to all the way making it to a lead and senior developer now.
Uh, you already firstly, this is all fantastic what you've done, and for example, you are an author of the book, giving back to the community while also being a developer yourself. It's a great example where people should strive for, or the path we should try to take on. So, firstly, thank you for that. The main goal of, or why I actually wanted to have this interview was because you actually authored a book called Learn to Code and Get a Job, which is like full of actionable information about becoming a developer and also landing your first job. But before we get to that part, maybe you can give a more thorough background, how you became developer, why, and what's your journey been like.
Yeah, sure. First, about your first statement, I want to mention that I'm so happy to be able to give back to the community because when I was starting out, so many people gave me free mentorship, advice. There were free tutorials, free coding programs, of course, free code camp, all these other things that helped me. And just the amount of, I don't know, the amount of feeling that it gave me, appreciation that I had for other people, helped motivate me to also want to give back and give people that same feeling that I had when I was starting out. So when I was starting out, I basically I had a mixed approach a little bit to learning to code because I was actually playing around with writing web pages as a teenager and even before that. And then I really wanted to build games and RPGs. So I was building if you played RPGs, maybe you know Golden Sun or Earthbound, those types of games as a teenager. I wasn't really heavy into the coding aspect. I was more into building it with user interfaces. Anyway, fast forward to when I went to college, I started going for software engineering, but I couldn't figure out exactly what I wanted to do, and I felt a little bit lost and confused in the whole process. So I ended up, because I was focusing on computers, but I was still undecided with my exact path in that way. So I ended up dropping out. And then I did a whole bunch of different types of work over several years. So I traveled and worked at random places, even doing things like building go-karts, IT work where I'd have to turn the printer off and on and, see if it works, all of that sort of thing. And I felt like I wasn't in a rewarding career and it wasn't where I wanted to be. So I was very mentally and inwardly frustrated with where I was. And so finally I decided, I have to grow up and I've always wanted to learn to code. So I have to just set a goal and get from, the very beginning point A all the way up until I am job ready. So I have to do it, and no matter what, I'm going to do that. Because over the years, I had taken lots of classes. I took tons of classes, even at colleges and other places, like learn JavaScript, learn this, learn that. I probably learned a lot of different tools, like the basics of a lot of things. And I never got good enough to get a job, having a more comprehensive understanding about development. So that's what I set out to do in 2014. At the end of 2014, I had just kind of switched. I think it was then when I switched jobs, or maybe it was in 2015. But at the end of 2014, I built a couple mobile apps following a Team Treehouse course. And then that kind of motivated me, seeing that, wow, I can build apps. And, they were kind of goofy, but still ready to publish into the store. So in 2015, that's when I set out to get into web development, because I had been reading that was the easiest entry point into becoming a developer, was through web development. And I had already done some freelance WordPress sites and websites and some really pretty basic things before that. So I felt like I could get in through that. I found Free Code Camp. I followed the curriculum and I finished the whole front end curriculum. I was working through the back end curriculum, and that's when I got hired in October of 2015. So I just had my 5-year anniversary as a developer recently.
Yay.
And that was, maybe I missed some things, but that's like the basics of how I got here.
That's some story. And I mean, there are already so many points that I'd like to ask more about. So do I understand correctly that you are the kind of person that gets motivated by building actual things, let's say web projects?
Yes. I feel like when there's a tangible result, then, I think that's what gives me motivation to continue. Initially it's hard to get motivated when you're learning, like, this is a variable, this is a function in the back of your mind, and like, what would I ever use this for? And then when you start building programs and web apps and all that kind of stuff, you're like, wow, this is awesome. Did I do that? Yeah.
Yeah,
So yeah, it was definitely motivating.
I can relate to, because when I was back in the university and we had to learn Java by just, getting some input from the command line, it wasn't that exciting. But once you get to the graphical part of it and you get to see how your different functions come together and create something real that others can use, now this is something cool. But I'm naturally going to move to the topic of why should one actually become developer. And just for background information for also listeners, like, this is year 2020 and the COVID has hit the whole world. Many people have had to stay home and maybe even learn new skills, and the rise of the importance of development tutorials and career change has become more important. So my question is, like, if there are people out there who are considering becoming a developer, then why should they, and what are the character traits that one should have?
That's a good question. So there are a couple different aspects of why people should consider development. Of course, there's the monetary and career aspect of being well compensated and being in a growing field with lots of job opportunities and lots of opportunities for advancement. But I would say beyond that, just being a developer is really rewarding, that you get to be creative every day and solve problems, and just mentally it feels like you are accomplishing something and doing something, which is something I didn't really feel when I was working in other fields or previous jobs. I felt like, oh, I'm just going to a job today. But as a developer, it feels like you're always learning and growing, and that itself is incredibly rewarding, beyond the good compensation, good perks, all of those other things that are available in the development industry. I also want to say that no matter what type of development you start off with, you have so many opportunities. This is another great thing about development, is that you can go into robotics, or you can go into AI or blockchain, or you can build different types of applications that are in line with your personal passions, outside of development. So there's just so many different ways you can take it. If you like fashion, good, you can build apps around fashion. If you like sports, you can build sports apps. So it can align with all of your other interests as well, on top of itself being rewarding.
I guess saying here that when being a developer, then the sky really is the limit. Because, as you said, you can do whatever you want to. But
yeah, exactly.
You also mentioned that it can be mentally rewarding, that you get to tackle new challenges every day. But what would you say to people who are afraid of becoming a developer? There are those, let's say, misconceptions maybe that development requires tons of logical thinking and maths and so on. But what would you say to those people?
I would say you can learn anything. There's nothing that's, beyond your capabilities of learning. Even people who are really good at math, they had to learn it somehow. So you just kind of take it one step at a time, just like you learn what a variable is. Okay. And then you learn what a function is. And then you take it step by step. And then when you're, 1,000 steps in, you look back at the beginning, you're like, wow, did I really learn that? And I would also say, don't compare yourself to anybody else. I think that's one of the biggest problems that people have. They develop this complex, like, oh, I can never be as good as this person. Maybe I shouldn't be a developer because I'll never be able to achieve what this person's achieved, or I'll never, I'm not as smart as that person, or something like that. Mm-hmm. So, you're your own person. Some people, it takes them 3 months and they became a developer, and some people it takes 2 years. The person who takes 2 years isn't worse than the person who takes 3 months. Maybe they're creative in a different way and they can bring a different kind of value to the company. It's not just about your raw talent in coding, it's a creative field. So yeah, that's what I would say. I would encourage you to still pursue development.
I can definitely agree here, and especially as a developer, it's not just about coding. Maybe I would argue maybe even more so. It's about coming up with creative solutions and talking to people and so on. Because most of the mistakes are human errors, I would say, and people are different.
I agree with that.
But when we talk about the learning part, you mentioned some of the resources you use yourself in order to build apps like Treehouse. But now that you've been a developer yourself for over 5 years, what are the main resources you would recommend to others when they want to start the career path of becoming a developer?
Yeah, so I would say that there's a couple different avenues you can go down. So you do have to do a little bit of research on your own just to, establish a foundation. These are the options available. What's the best thing available for me in my life right now? I would say before you jump into a specific path, then it would be good for you to just test out a little bit of coding, of any type of coding. So maybe you could, follow a YouTube tutorial, or, do some free code camp challenges, or just test it out and see if you like it, if you have never coded before at all. Other than that, I give a whole process in my book for, from planning to preparing your curriculum to studying and going, following the whole path until you become a developer. So if you have any questions about that, then I would love to answer them. So you can leave them in the comments below this video, and I will check for those.
And I'm definitely gonna link to your book. And as we touched some of the points from your book, you don't only talk about the coding part, but you also talk about especially like planning and how to turn your time into smaller pieces so you could be more productive basically when learning those stuff. So again, the learning part isn't just about writing code or learning to code, but it's about managing your own expectations and having the goal of and why you want to become a developer. Okay, but there are, like, especially now, for example, there's this hashtag 100 days of code thing going on in development communities, where I see some amazing people picking up development and they're actually building real projects. But what I've noticed for many of them, these are just some small projects that they build themselves. But at some point, many of these people also want to land their first job. And I'm now going to move over to the topic of, well, landing your first job. So can you maybe shed some light on that topic? Like, what are the things one should keep in mind regarding the first job?
Yes. Yeah, there's so many things. So the first thing you should be doing, and even as you're learning, before you're even ready to get your first job, is networking, attending coding events, reaching out to people at different companies, going to developer meetups, anything that you can do to get around other developers and start to meet other developers. Because the more that they meet you, then the more likely you are to get recommended by them for jobs at their company in the future. And that's how a lot of developers get jobs, because many companies prefer to hire through a network. So they prefer to get an internal recommendation, because those employees that get referred are, I can't remember the exact stats from studies, but they're more likely to stay longer and be a better fit for the company. And also employees get an incentive to refer you as well, because they usually get some kind of a bonus. And if they already like you, then they want to bring you on board because they know, hey, this is, someone I think I'd like to work with anyway. So I'd say networking is the number one biggest thing. There are different types of networking events, but in general, it's a good idea to first start attending a few meetups that are close to you, get a feel for which kind of coding meetings are better for networking and meeting people. And then I would say the next step after that, as far as networking goes, is to start giving talks. And I know that's scary. I was petrified. My first talk, I had like some crumpled up piece of paper and I was following the steps on the paper. And I don't know how I made it through, but it was like 15 or 20 minutes and I made it to the end. And everyone was really nice to me. But, I slowly improved my speaking skills. And also at the end of my talks, I would say, hey, my name's Gwen. I am looking for a job. If anyone, is interested in talking to me about that, then I would love to talk to you after. And that did a couple things for me, especially as a shy person. People would come up to me after and they would say, hey, great talk, or I liked this, or they had a question about something, or sometimes it was a job opportunity. So I made a lot of connections after I started speaking. So that was one of the best things in my career. And actually, I've been speaking even until today. I've been taking classes to become a better speaker, off and on. I'd say my talks have improved, not off and on, but my talks have improved over the years. And that's something I'm even now continuing to improve and benefit from learning to speak. So I would say speaking is a really good thing for your career. And then there's so many different things. So blogging also. Blogging, and it's important to have some kind of presence online that can really, really help you to find jobs. There's different places you can blog. Hashnode is a great opportunity because it's just a couple button clicks and you have your own blog and people can discover you on that platform. You can also write articles on LinkedIn. You can start your own blog and then write a few really good quality articles on there, and then try to submit to other platforms after that, like Hacker Noon and Free Code Camp and some of the larger platforms after you already have some experience blogging. But I would say that there's no barrier to entry to blogging. You don't have to know anything yet. I think some of the most valuable blogs for beginners are, other beginners talking about their struggles and saying, hey, these are my goals. This is what I did today. This is what I'm struggling with. I can't get APIs. They're just so frustrating, but I'm working through it. And yeah, and even I started doing that actually in 2015. And I had people reach out to me with advice and encouragement. It was a really cool thing. So I've been blogging. This is my current blog at gwenfaraday.com is my third iteration of my blog. So there I mostly post weekly updates now, but I also write longer articles on Free Code Camp now. So I think that's still a beneficial thing for me, even 5 years in. So blogging is huge. Networking is huge. And then, of course, there are other aspects that I talk about, like your resume and portfolio, how to talk to recruiters and all of those different aspects. But I would say, marketing yourself online with a blog or a YouTube channel or something, and networking, those are the two biggest things that you can start right now.
There's tons of information coming from here and tons of useful information. But one of the main things I picked up was that you don't have to know things before you start writing or networking. It's okay to say that, hey, I'm just a beginner, I don't know much, but I'm just sharing my journey. And I really like the point that you said that you as a beginner started writing and people actually contacted you in order to help. Now, this is really powerful.
Yes. And companies also liked it too. I went for interviews where companies were like, hey, I read your blog. And it was really cool because they felt like they knew me before I went in for the interview. So that I think it reduced the barrier to entry and helped me get more job offers. It also makes you feel, more like a real person. If you're talking about your struggles, it shows that you're humble enough to, put your faults out there and say that you're working through it. It shows that you can communicate your ideas, and writing and being able to communicate things are also really important skills for a developer. So I think blogging really helps show employers that you are good at those things too.
Yeah, I can't agree more. Actually, to be honest, my first year as a professional developer, of course, I was also struggling with technical things, but I remember one of my main goals was to improve my technical speaking and my ability to explain myself technically. So, and if you do that before getting a job, that's just great. And
Yeah.
I guess it can also be said that when you are blogging, it also shows that you are willing to put in the hours, you are willing to be consistent, which is, I guess, one of those characteristics that employers are really looking for.
Yeah, because it is a risk hiring a brand new developer, especially if you didn't graduate from college with a degree. So employers are like, is this person really going to put in the effort? Are they really, do they really know what they're talking about? But if you have that whole record of you writing a blog post every week or twice a week or something like that, then they can see, oh, okay, this person has been really dedicated over time. They've been posting and this is how they've grown, and I can see that they know things because they're writing about them here. So yeah, I totally agree with you there.
This is great to hear. But now I'm gonna try to look at it from a different perspective. Let's say that you are going to an interview now. You've gone to a few interviews and you've got many. You failed those interviews. what would you say to people who like how to deal with failures is my question actually here.
I would say the best way to deal with failures is not to treat them as failures, because every interview is a learning opportunity. So you can take note of what questions they asked you, what things did you struggle with? Do you need more help with your interpersonal skills? Should you go to practice interview sessions or set up practice interview sessions with people around you? So every interview is a chance for you to get better. And if you interview enough, then you start to get really good at interviewing, and then suddenly you're not nervous anymore. So, if that takes 20, 30, 40, 50 interviews, then that is a really good outcome, even though you technically didn't pass the interview, didn't move on, but you still got really good at interviewing. You got better at explaining yourself, and you also learned more about technology because you had to research after maybe you got questions wrong or something like that. So it's a great learning opportunity to interview. Even if you're not currently looking for a job, I still think it's important to go to interviews, because you never know. Maybe the person that you interview with at a company, now, maybe in 6 months, you're looking for a job and that company really liked you. So then you reach out to him and they're like, yeah, we really liked you and we want to hire you. So you never know where that's going to take you. So I think, yeah, interviewing is important at any stage, and it's really good for beginners to go to a lot of interviews.
And not only beginners, I guess. I mean, even if you already have a solid job, it's still a great skill to improve going to interviews. Yes. And performing under pressure. Yes. Okay, but let's still continue on the path of hiring. Let's say now there's the person has actually landed their first job, which is awesome. You also talk in your book about it, like how to strive as a new employee and what are the steps that one should take in order to get to the next level, but still being a good developer and being a good employee.
Yes. So I think I've seen some new developers, they get their first job and then they think, oh, I'm set. Or, there's two different types of people. There's people, they think they're set, or, oh no, I'm so stressed, I'm going to get fired because I'm making all these mistakes. So the reality is, neither one of those cases, but you do, you're kind of on a trial period at your first job, and you do have to impress your employer, with a good work ethic, with learning and showing that you are able to grow. So it is really important for you to really, I would say the first 3 months are the most important, because, and for any developer really, you're getting used to the project and the processes and all of that stuff. You really have to be ready to make meaningful contributions at least within the first 3 months at any company. So I would say from day one, you need to be taking notes, and even after work, if you can review your notes and, try to understand their processes. Sometimes you're looking at this massive code base and you're like, oh no, where do I start? But you have to just break it down line by line. Okay, what does this line do? And then make a note of that. Okay, what does this line do? Make a note of that. What is this function for? Make a note of that. So I think that's really important to kind of stay on your game. And, the same tools that you were using in learning, setting goals, keeping track of your progress, that kind of stuff. You should do the same thing really at your first job. You should have certain goals for contributing. And if you have a mentor or if you have a lead developer, that's, a really good thing, because you can talk with them about it. Okay, where do you think I should be at? And then here are my goals as well. So you can kind of work with them to develop a good relationship, and then show that you have a good work ethic and really impress your employer, because that is just going to, be really good for your career in the long run. If you can't keep your first job for at least 3 months, then you really have to start all over, looking for your second job. So you have to try to keep your first job for 6 to 12 months if you can. That's like the best case scenario.
I really like the idea of, you said in the beginning that landing a job isn't the kind of finish line. It's more like a milestone. But I would even say that the most important part starts when you actually land the job. So this is definitely a key takeaway I'd like to point out. And it's actually one of the reasons why I do this developer habits channel, because at least how I see it is being a developer means having that constant growth mindset of becoming a better developer, becoming better. As you said, you try to improve your communication skills, for example, all the time. So you must constantly try to improve. And especially in the tech world, things are moving so fast, and so we as developers must be able to constantly learn new stuff.
Yes.
But from the mentor's perspective, what would you say to people, let's say lead developers or more senior developers, why should they want to mentor other people, especially like less experienced developers?
Yeah. So if you are a lead developer, I mean, that's part of your job, or a lead or senior developer, to mentor younger developers. That's why you're paid more, to make decisions and to bring your team up to speed and all of that sort of thing. But I would also say it's not just beneficial for the other people, and it's not just because it's your job, but I would say it's also good for you. If you explain things to other people, that's when you really learn. It's like that saying, whatever it is, like if you teach something, that's when you really learn it. And so I feel like that in mentoring and giving talks and things, like I've gained a much deeper understanding of concepts from having to teach them to other people. And then, of course, it's intrinsically rewarding to help other people. The people you mentor will, in turn, mentor other people, and, so on. So it's a chain of giving back, but you're also giving to yourself at the same time.
That's a really nice way to put it. And actually, I can see like there's a full circle connecting here. Let's say you are a less experienced developer, you start blogging, you start giving talks, you start educating others. But while you are, climbing your own career ladder and maintaining that routine of blogging, you're already mentoring others. So it's kind of already in your nature to teach others.
Yes.
Okay, we are about to run out of time, but I still have one more last question for you. As a developer, name one habit that makes you better.
That's hard to answer. So I've set up productivity systems over the years that have really helped me, and especially this past year. I mean, I say this every year, but every year they get better. So this past year, I've gotten much, much better with following the Getting Things Done methodology, which is based off the book by David Allen called Getting Things Done. And it basically, you break everything down into actionable tasks, and you have a few different folders. All of your inputs, like random thoughts or to-dos for the future, everything that you could possibly need to do at some point goes into an inbox. And then every week you sort out that inbox, make actionable tasks. And then you take your actionable tasks, you put them into projects or group them or put dates or tags or something on them. So just learning and following that process has been huge for me as a developer, because especially working for different clients now, it's like, oh, this one client needs this and this other client needs this. And on top of that, I'm making this content. And it feels like I have 1,000 different things to do at any given moment. So I really have to learn to prioritize and break down tasks and, not forget about things. Actually, before I was a developer, I used to miss meetings and appointments and stuff all the time. I was terrible at it. And then I started like one by one. Okay, I'm going to start following a calendar, and then I'm going to start reading productivity books and, all of these other things. So I'd say that was the number one thing that helps me right now stay sane, but also stay productive, is to follow the getting things done method. So if you haven't heard of it, then I would definitely recommend reading the book and then also checking out one YouTube channel, Brian Jenks. We'll post it in a link below. But he teaches about productivity and a couple different apps that you can use to more productively take notes and use the getting things done method and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, I highly recommend that too.
These are some really great resources you brought out here, and we'll make sure to actually link them in the description of the video also. But
Awesome.
I guess we're done here. Like, Gwen, I'd like to thank you for this really insightful interview. You gave tons of great tips for developers and many resources, and maybe you yourself have something to say for the end.
Yeah, I want to thank you for having me on. And also, I think it's great that you're doing these types of videos, not just raw coding. Like, I do lots of raw coding, but sometimes people need to get out of the code and build better habits and improve themselves as well, not just in terms of writing different types of code or learning more just about the technology. So this is great what you're doing, and I'm happy to be here. Thanks.
Thank you. And also for the viewers, I thank you for watching and listening. And I guess we're going to see you in the next video. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.